As I emerged from my pod, it felt as though I was alone, but that was not entirely accurate. These flames are sentient, and while your average person is unable to hear or speak to the flame, I could as a flameborn. They became my guiding light and one of the vessels sending me on quest to reclaim Embervale. As I stood high atop the cinder vault, I soaked in what was the first of many breathtaking views. To navigate and track your discoveries. Look at this world, though. I almost thought I was going to fall there. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. And I pondered, what is a story that's going to be told here? Well, it didn't take long to learn that my awakening came at a cost. The Cinder Vault did not keep me safe by chance. Sacrifices in time, blood, and lives were made to ensure I could awake. Long Keep was the home of my Cinder Vault, and it's perched high atop a cliffside. Braylon Bridge was the only route available for transport. It's isolated and easy to guard, but safety was an illusion. The ancients knew this, and so they ordered Captain Arkwright to defend the vault as it was being attacked. Over time, attacks on the Braylon Bridge became numerous, and day after day, Arkwright's crew fought them back. Growing exhausted, they feared they wouldn't be able to survive another assault. With that, Captain Arkwright made a difficult decision: destroy the bridge. While this decision made the attack stop, the crew knowingly cut off their only supply route. Eventually, the crew grew hungry and all their other supplies ran out. They held out for as long as they could, but the time came when Captain Arkwright was hit with another difficult decision. They had to leave the Cinder Vault in pursuit of more supplies. He felt they had to take the risk. They had to travel through the Shroud in order to get the supplies from the other side. He believed this action would be certain death, and as I went into the Shroud for the first time, I learned that he was right. Oh, I got a ring. It looks like there's another dude right there. Let's see if maybe... Let's go check out the ring, but let's see if he drops. Somehow I parried him. What do we got here? Oh, this is Captain Arkwright. He said that it was certain death to go down into the Shroud, so he didn't make it. That was him, I just killed him. While this marks the beginning of the Flameborn story, it's by all accounts the end of what happened here in Embervale. The events that led to the Flameborn's birth have burned out, left to smolder, and buildings have been ground down to rubble. Scattered lore pages are threaded across the region, coming together as if a tapestry is being woven. It isn't until you reach Stillwater Bay that the final stitches are locked in and the tapestry is unfurled. So buckle up, because the plot to this game has it all: heroes, villains, sacrifice, magic, and adventure. This is the enchanting tale of Enshrouded. Before I get any further, this is a detailed lore video, and it may contain spoilers, so proceed with caution. Anyway, let's get into the kingdoms of Embervale. The Revel Woods is a region that consists of dense redwood forest, wild strawberries, and mining resources to up your game. In the golden age of Embervale, it was ruled over by one kingdom. Pikemeat's Reach was the capital, and it stood proud as a city of high watchtowers, bustling markets, and warm exchanges between residents. The lore indicates that Anders, Elio, and Valerie once lived there. These are all humans that the Flameborn rescues as part of their pursuit to restore Embervale. I will get into that a little bit later. Its heart was in its ruler, Queen Pikemead. She was beloved by her people for her grace and wisdom. However, Queen Pikemead passed away a while ago, well before the mysterious wanderer came into the picture. She was buried at Mistbury Catacombs, a place I visited in the Springlands. Get ourselves healed up for the queen. We are ready. The Queen's Tomb. What is this? Pikemead's Bulwark. And this has got to be better than what I got right now. So this is an 8 for a block. 2 and 7, yeah. Yeah. Starting to look better. Turns away from me whenever I try to show off my shield. For reasons that are not really explained, upon Queen Pikemead's death, Embervale was split into 3 kingdoms. of which were led by her 3 children. King Gormander ruled over the western regions, Queen Jasmina ruled over the regions of the east, and then Lord Vorgoth ruled the north. Each ruler had their own style, one that will be reflected in the story later on in this video. But if I had to summarize, I'd say King Gormander was inept and self-serving, Queen Jasmina was compassionate and proactive, and Lord Vorgoth was egotistical and ran a propaganda machine. In time, their kingdoms collapsed in one way or another, but it all started with this guy. Everything changed when Lord Vorgoth agreed to meet with the mysterious wanderer, who mysteriously wandered into his court and claimed to have had a gift from beyond. Early in the morning, the mysterious wanderer drifted into Lord Vorgoth's throne room with the mist following him. He looked sickly. His skin was pale and tinted blue. His face lacked symmetry, like he had a stroke. But in his hand, he held a flask containing a blue liquid. Upon inquiry, the mysterious wanderer said that it was a weapon, not one made by mortal human hands, but by the ancients, a weapon the ancients wanted to keep from humans. Lord Vorgoth accepted the gift and gulped down the liquid. In an instant, he could feel the elixir as it raced through his veins, pulling behind his eyes, sharpening his thoughts, bending the world around him. As the ground fell away and his body rose, Lord Vorgoth hovered above his own throne. He was levitating. When his feet finally touched the floor once more, he turned to see the wanderer smiling. Lord Vorgoth's next ambition was simple: convince his siblings to drink the elixir and embrace its glory. That evening, Lord Vorgoth left his throne to attend the royal annual ball. King Gormander needed very little persuasion. A small drop of the elixir added to his wine was enough to win him over. Queen Jasmina, on the other hand, refused. You see, people from the Kindleways have a faith in the ancients, often praying to them or questioning them when everything around them has gone to shit. Queen Jasmina trusted their godlike wisdom and felt the ancients must have been keeping the elixir from them for a good reason. Lord Vorgoth and Queen Jasmina argued over this for quite some time, with it erupting with Lord Vorgoth giving Queen Jasmina a good slap, finally quieting her. In that moment, it was clear. Lord Vorgoth had a new god. I only trust the mist under the wanderer's hood, the twitch of his shadow, the gaping of his 100 mouths. This guy sounds ghoulish. Following the ball, the mysterious wanderer handed over blueprints to Lord Vorgoth so he may construct the elixir wells. An architect was present for the construction of the first few wells, and when the shroud started to rise up, Lord Vorgoth did ask about it. The architect looked away, avoiding eye contact. Since he couldn't lie, he didn't say anything at all. Before doubt could set in, the mysterious wanderer leaned to Lord Vorgoth's ear and whispered, "It's not something to be concerned about. In fact, we may welcome it." From there, the construction of the elixir wells began to spread, but this was not necessarily under royal decree. Even without Queen Jasmina's blessing, Lord Vorgoth planned to have a private contractor set up wells in the Kindleways. A curious string of lore pages found in the Kindleways may explain how this took place. In the enshrouded town of Lowtide, a distillery operation was established. An unnamed author describes receiving a shroud weaver. This is a staff owned by the mysterious wanderer. At first, the author was offended, interpreting the gift as an insult. However, he realized that this is the way of the mysterious wanderer. He doesn't give straightforward answers. He tests you and bends perception. The tone of this note feels as if this unnamed author is familiar with the mysterious wanderer's shenanigans. Perhaps this was not his first encounter with him. Just to the north of Brittle-Bush, you learn of a man that is later identified as Costner Myers, and he just sold just about everything for a map to find an oasis. Following his route, Costner is overtaken by sandstorms. His supplies are buried, lost beneath the dunes. When he believes he sees the oasis ahead, he abandons his camp and gives chase, leaving his supplies behind. Unfortunately, it's a mirage. Now dehydrated and on the brink of death, Costner recounts seeing a phantom or ghost drifting at the edge of his vision. Upon completing the quest, you go to a small pocket of shroud area just south of the ancient spires. in the Kindleways. There, you receive randomized loot in the golden chest, but there's no obvious skeletal remains in the area, so you really don't have any answers. What became of Costner Myers? The answer may be just a little further south of that location. There, you discover a now filled in elixir well with the lore page hidden inside. Costner Myers returns. He pursued property owners to purchase land in the Kindleways, eventually acquiring land of his own where this elixir well sits. This elixir well connects to low tide, just a couple hundred meters from where the mysterious wanderer rewarded that unknown person, the Shroud Weaver.
We're through the looking glass here, people.
In his final entry, he introduces the elixir to others, no longer a desperate wanderer, but a man with a purpose. While this story provides some unknowns, perhaps Costner Myers is the private contractor, there on Lord Vorgoth's behalf, guided by the mysterious wanderer. And if the mysterious wanderer is not truly human, then perhaps he persuades through visions, miracles, and gifts. Whatever is enough to nudge mortals into doing the work for him and spreading the shroud more efficiently. Thereafter, the mysterious wanderer was seen heading west just south of Jasper Isles until his trail runs cold in the enshrouded area between Fort Calvin and Lone Thistle. However, one account suggests he's likely headed for Glenwood's End. In every encounter, though, the pattern remains the same. The mysterious wanderer appears as a specter or a ghost, in a vision or in a dream, and to each person he visits, he leaves behind the same instruction. As elixir well construction started to gear up, other unintended consequences, aside from shroud exposure, began to creep in. The Eldermere Dam in the Kindleways dried up, and waters have receded, leaving the region in an extended drought. And then deep sinkhole started showing up. We should have taken some of that shroud potion. Maelstrom construction site. That looks like a whole lot of nothing. In Deadly Shroud. Why? What's over here? How did that happen? Now, the elixir itself left a mark as well. It was a magical potion that you could find on scavengers or around scavenger outposts, and it's actually the only potion you cannot craft through Balthazar. When the Flameborn consumes it, you receive a 30% increase to your damage for 30 minutes, and I suspect you're spared the negative side effects, provided that you're a Flameborn and all. The elixir made people feel rejuvenated and fearless, but long-term use result in brain damage. Soon enough, users who may have once been upstanding citizens eventually became these scavengers, eventually behaving just like any other addict. Also, I let Remy go. Sneaky Rat was lapping up the spilled elixir from the floor. Disgraceful. Yep, just all dignity just goes out the window. Soon enough, entire towns fell apart as people stopped tending to their societal duties. In some cases, elixir production wasn't even fast enough for these fiends. Some started forming secret groups with plans to construct their own elixir wells, or they would steal elixir while on the job. But it didn't stop there either. Gorgers were created through their abuse of the elixir, injecting themselves with corrupt elixir. The effects of this result in the person smelling of alcohol, acid leaking from their mouths, and then lobbing vials of acid at anyone who they deem a threat. Oh! The Gorgers were known as matrons, or they've been referred to as queens, and they lead the scavengers in their depravity, often guarding building blocks or equipment the survivors have lost in pursuit of their vaults. Now, there is also another female boss variant that rules over the scavengers called the Scavenger Tyrant. There isn't much said about them, but it doesn't really matter. Whether it's a Gorger or a Scavenger Tyrant, these ladies have the scavengers whooped. What's this? This is some lore. I love lore. Scavenger Tyrant. Don't whip me, mommy. Did you see the new tyrant in Obsidia? Oh, she's haunting. Another female leader. It's the way she cracks her whip on my back that gets me. How she revels in the gift of pain. Her wicked smile, her crooked teeth. Oh, it sends shivers down my spine. So I hope she doesn't whip me. Oh no, I sure hope she doesn't find me here slacking off only to whip me. Whatever would I do if she found me here and whipped me like the bad, bad boy that I am? Oh my god. And as you know by now, eventually the shroud crept into Embervale. The shroud is a direct consequence of harvesting the mushroom distilled into the elixir. These mushrooms are found deep underground, and the activities associated with extracting them release concentrated amounts of spores. But the impacts of its exposure were not realized right away. There are several instances in the lore where people alluded to a blight or a calamity that they heard about, but it was over there, a couple towns over. As a result, people weren't exactly taking precautions and may have even engaged in spreading the shroud even more outside of the activities at the elixir wells. In other words, the shroud didn't spread through the wells alone. With their enticing glow and hypnotic movements, the shroud roots are at the center of many enshrouded hotspots. While they can be found deep in the elixir wells, they also sprouted up above ground. And as it is with many of our endeavors, humans have a tendency to introduce things to new lands without giving it too much thought. Surely, many thought the shroud root was kind of cool, and when its seeds were distributed at markets, the shroud was able to tighten its grasp on Embervale even more. Case in point, a gentleman by the name of Hemming wrote about a fascinating seed that he bought that takes root, sprouts fast, and it glows. He thought this plant was so cool that he planted it in his own town of Foxchase. Unbeknownst to him, he planted the shroud root and thus unintentionally engulfed his own town and infected the residents with the shroud. This wasn't an isolated tragedy either. Examples of the unintentional spread can be observed in several locations across Embervale. Now, of course, after some time, people began to connect the dots. Despite the mysterious wanderer's blessing, the shroud was becoming a curse, and exposure to it was bad. Like, really bad. At first, contact with it feels kind of like an inconvenience, sort of like you're experiencing allergies. You may feel some skin and eye irritation, but as it progresses, it takes over your body. It manipulates. It is not something where medicine or time heals you. It's a parasite that consumes the host of all of its nutrients, and humans happen to be the preferred host, albeit animals may be corrupted as well. The infected are called the Fel. The slow-moving, zombie-like Fel are the effects of the shroud towards the end of the fungus's life cycle. For the slower-moving soldiers, the fungus has won, and the host has become more mushroom than human. What's that up there? Oh, look at it. It's one of those mushrooms. Look at his feet up there. Oh, look at them. They fell. Let's see. Can we get up there? Let's just see if we can get up there real quick. Detour. Ooh, this might be quite a mountain climb. Okay, so there's the mushroom dude. Oh, please, Heather. These rolling hills. Okay. I think everybody else retreated back to the shroud. That mushroom dude. This guy and the guy that fell. All that remains. Wait a minute. Why can't... Huh. I guess like after a certain period it just... Why can't I collect anything? But this at least shows that... Like, let's get rid of the HUD. It shows that they are just looking to turn into full-blown mushroom. Yeah, just like the... Look at how you could see the shadow of the mushroom. Oh, I'm having so much fun with this. This is so interesting to me. And that is the goal in the end. Turn the host into one of its own and spread. However, not all Fel are the shambling, half-aware husk I just mentioned. The slow-moving, zombie-like creatures are the infection in its most basic form. Pure and direct shroud exposure. But take someone infected by the shroud and then weave in a little bit of magic, well, you get something else. Dare I say something monstrous. As you reach the Snowman Highlands, Balthazar admits that his work is limited with the materials he has. He needed a cauldron, and he knew of someone who might have one. Ikora. Ikora was a bit of a recluse, but she made powerful potions out of her shop in Rattlebreak. The lore here revealed that Ikora had a bit of a mental break. Her shop, a place that once gave her solitude, had dragged her into a dark place with only an emptiness left within her. She was experimenting with shroud spores and brewing potions in her cauldron, but she found something fascinating. The spores didn't just corrupt, they recycled. They broke cells down and created a new cycle of energy and growth. Whatever was placed into the spore-laden fluid was destroyed and remade into something else. This was the only thing that seemed to fill the emptiness within her. She became obsessed. Days blurred into nights as she tinkered with her brew, trying to learn exactly how the spores worked. Pouring time into the cauldron, watching the spores swirl as she stirred her brew, it was mesmerizing. Then one day she stared at her mixture, spellbound by the swirling spores. The spell only broke when she realized something was staring back at her. This brew became an entity, and it understood her emptiness, because it was empty too. Or hungry rather. She began referring to it as the Maw, and their bond grew darker and darker until the line between the two dissolved. Suddenly, Ikora was drawn to the cauldron in a more intimate way. She wanted to feed the Maw and rid herself of her emptiness. So she did something quite horrific, and it was voluntary. She crawled into the cauldron, allowing the Maw to devour her. Effectively, two became one. After the transformation occurred, Ikora settled into the Cradle of Dusk, in the shroud where she now feels most at home. She left a trail of corruption, and as I entered the haze, I was sensing the cauldron was not going to be easily acquired.
I'm going to be going in the shroud at night. Lovely. Can't wait. Is there anything else? Maybe we'll use some magic. I am starting to feel like this is going to lead to something that is going to be kind of scary.
Whatever concoction Ikora made, it must not have stayed within Rattlebreak. It's possible this concoction was distributed at her shop before she turned into the monstrosity. But Balthazar also issued warnings urging people to avoid black market tinctures for shroud protection. It's a grim reminder that you never really know what you're going to get when taking unregulated substances. Ikora's story offers the most likely explanation for why some fowl look nothing like their natural form. And who knows, maybe this applies to some animals as well. And of course, we can't talk about animals becoming corrupted by the shroud without talking about the dragon. As the story goes, dragons have been long extinct, and they are a direct ancestor to the draconian and white-winged vultures. Lord Vorgoth marched into the Albanese summits, and at the top of the tallest peak, a sleeping dragon awoke. Lord Vorgoth took his axe and split the head of the mother dragon, leaving his axe between her eyes as she fell from the skies. However, the peak was a womb and held a dormant dragon egg. Eventually, one of the elixir wells in the summits released the shroud, corrupted the egg, and the dragon eventually rose from Howling Peak. The lore builds this boss fight up to epic proportions, with warnings, images of the dragon overshadowing entire valleys, and the ruins. Slaying it should have felt epic, like a victory only a few survivors are capable of achieving, but it honestly kind of fell flat. My triumph of finally beating this dragon was met with silence, and if I must say, I was a little disappointed.
Okay, well, so far I don't see anybody with the little exclamation points. Nobody is congratulating me? No, nobody cares? Maybe, does the flame care? You're the one that gave me this quest. Let's see what the flame says. You don't seem to care either. Gosh, guys, that was like the biggest accomplishment of my Flameborn career, and you got nothing for me.
Thus far, humans have been the focus of what transpired here. They were both the perpetrators and the victims of one of the most catastrophic events in Embervale's history. But Embervale is special because there is other sapient life in this world. So I want to pause for a second and introduce you to the beings that had to live through and adapt to the changing environment. These sapient beings have natural histories, cultures, and traditions, just like humans do. The ones that you hear about but never see, as of yet, are the ancients. At the beginning of the game, they are a bit of a mystery and largely unnamed, but they are integral to the lore. They have otherworldly powers, most of which are bound to the flame, and the flame is a force with unknown origins. But the ancients are rather protective of it, even punishing any of those that steal parts of the flame. And these are, of course, the Hallows, and they are completely separate from the Fel. The ancients typically banish the Hallows to the Hollow Halls, structures that are also of unknown origin. But since Embervale's fall, you may see them elsewhere in the world. The ancients have banished humans, dogs for some reason, and cyclopses. Now, cyclopses live in caves of the Albanese summits, and there isn't too much information about them besides that they may steal a goat or two from nearby goat farms, and they can also be infected by the shroud. But I digress. All around are remnants of ancient structures, which are easy to identify by their dark metallic material of which they are built. As part of two ongoing quests, the Flameborn is assigned to investigate the ancient spires and the obelisks. The ancient spires are these enormously tall buildings, you can't miss them. The spires are straightforward. They are teleporting towers that could only be used exclusively by the ancients. And now you, as the Flameborn, because you have a little bit of their spark. The obelisks aren't as cut and dry as the spires, but when the flame first speaks of them, it is said that they contain information about the world's fate. While some of the inscriptions are poetic and very much so up for interpretation, the obelisks in the Kindle Waste give us some answers and kind of demystify the ancients a bit more. There, it is said that there was a split due to the flame being tainted, because humans needed help from the flame to combat the effects of the shroud. After all, the obelisks state their unity was lost in the fog, or the shroud rather. The Empyrean, or the older ancients, wanted to keep the flame pure, so they made the decision to wait this one out and rise. The younger ones wanted to help humans and get them through this tough time. This is also later confirmed more clearly in the obelisk, in the Albanese summits, and then from lore pages found by Lorraine Krim. Therefore, the younger ancients are the ones that form the union with humans, specifically with Queen Jasmina, to remedy the dark plague that has befell them. And I'll get into those details a little bit more later in this video. The union between the ancients and humans extended beyond the birth of the Flameborn. By the time the Flameborn emerges from the Cinder Vault, humans are pretty much non-existent. However, as the ancients were preparing the Cinder Vault for the Flameborn, Balthazar was figuring out a way to preserve humans in a similar manner. He conducted endless experiments to test the viability of human preservation. He started small with rats, had some failures, but eventually the pod reached equilibrium. And the survivors that are rescued at the beginning of the game are the humans who were preserved to rebuild society. They're essentially workbenches and send you on additional quests. The humans who were stowed away in the vault were not the only survivors one could resurrect. Of the people who succumbed during the collapse, some were pure, meaning they were untouched by the shroud and the elixir upon their death. Strengthening the altar allows the flame to reach these souls and pull them out of the mortal realm. These are pure souls, and you find them where they died. Many of the pure souls have a story to tell, and I've told their stories in the form of shorts, which you can find in the Enshrouded playlist. They are assistants of the human survivors, and they can craft the same things as their human counterparts. The first of these sapient beings that you actually see are the Vuka. The Vuka worship a deity, and they have cultural practices that feel like a cross between paganism and shamanism. One of their cultural practices include these gladiator-type battles with their brawlers. These are massive brutes that you face at many locations across Embervale, often possessing key items on them. It's implied that many humans met their demise in these brawler arenas, and the brawlers were eaten pretty good. Now, as the shroud was displacing people everywhere above ground, there was unrest rumbling beneath it. Prior to the shroud entering on scene, they primarily inhabited caves. However, the shroud is heavy and it settled right into the low-lying areas, which included their homes. As it encroached in their areas, they had to adapt fast. There are accounts that speak on people feeling movements underground coming from beneath their feet, but the lore had always been sort of vague in what was causing all of the rumbling. However, the Enshrouded community generally agrees that these accounts are actually the Vuka digging underground to find respite. When they couldn't escape the shroud by digging away from it, they adapted by establishing themselves above the ground. One such place was known as Fort Calvin. Fort Calvin became a safe haven for people as the world was crumbling around them. However, as people were settling in, they began to experience the ground rumbling beneath their feet, and eventually the Vuka surfaced there. Having their panties already in a twist about being displaced and all, the Vukas battled the people at Fort Calvin, and they won. Elio was one of the people in the battle, but they didn't kill him. Instead, they threw him over one of the cliffs. Other areas in which the Vuka drove people away included the Pillars of Creation, a place where an archaeologist, Lorraine Krim, was studying the ancient structures. The Drakh are reptilian beings that are not witnessed until you reach the Veil Water Basin, near the end of the game, at least as far as early access goes. In this region, it is discovered that the Drakh recently returned to the Veil Water Basin, and they have always resented humans. Not because they unleashed the Shroud, but because they were jealous of the extra attention they received from the Ancients. There are 4 races within the Drakh species, and as of current, the Drakh Dal are the only race we see in the game. They all have different gods, but they follow one belief. The one belief is they believe in the Broodmother who gives life, and they all go to the afterlife, which is called the Ark Morgul. They believe the Ancients are messengers for their gods, and therein lies the reason for their resentment towards humans. They see that the Ancients have a different relationship with humans, and they have always yearned to have what humans had. Due to this jealousy, the Drakh tried to wipe out humans, attacking them at any opportunity. But humans exiled them to an archipelago out at sea. There they waited for some time, plotting their revenge. So when the Drakh saw the islands rise, they took that as a sign that the Ancients had turned their back on the people, and the rest is history. As the floodgates of ruin were opening up, the kingdoms of Embervale were unable to keep up with the number of crises they were confronted with. And the story hasn't even reached its climax yet. Trying to keep it together, King Gormander had his sights on Glenwood's End, and if you remember, the mysterious wanderer was heading in that direction. Glenwood's End was one of the larger towns in the Rebel Woods, and communication there had pretty much stopped. King Gormander sent his Inquisitor Lachlan there to investigate. A few days later, King Gormander received Lachlan's severed head in the mail. It was becoming increasingly clear that the elixir should have stayed hidden, but at this point, Embervale was past the point of no return. Lord Vorgoth was ramping up that propaganda machine I mentioned earlier, and when the Flameborn reaches the Albeneath summits, it is understood he was really fixated on one convenient enemy, one that he loathed even before he took his first sip of the elixir. This enemy was the Ancients. A top student at the Cromwell Institute of Imperial Defense, Daria Arkanov, excelled in courses such as Ancients, the Anatomy of the Adversary. Clearly, the path to indoctrination was already well established under Lord Vorgoth's rule. She was assigned to an expedition to infiltrate the Night Sanctums. She was tasked to find something, anything that would show that the Ancients are liars, dangerous, and a threat. Anything that could be used to justify preliminary strikes and desecration. But Daria couldn't find anything. It simply didn't exist. At the same time, Lord Vorgoth was sending his expansion program personnel to the older Ancients, who have already separated themselves from the calamity that was in full effect by now. But his personnel just had to figure out a way to deactivate the beacons. So far, anyone who set foot beyond their boundaries were either seriously injured or killed. And while this psyop worked to convince the public that the Ancients were the enemy, Lord Vorgoth wanted to expand his reach even further. He was assembling an army. His destination was Pikemead's Reach. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the sequence of everything, because aside from seeing the sequence of the lore presented in your journal, there are no dates. Further, a lot of the lore is encountered from back to front, so you're getting the story backwards. So I've been assuming a lot of these events have been occurring pretty closely together or concurrently. With that presupposition, you get a bit of information from the guard of the North's pants in one of the watchtowers at the pike that is a little confusing. His pants say, legends say he was consumed by the shroud after the ancients pushed him off Howling Peak's summit. Knowing that Lord Vorgoth rules over the North, the information from the pants would have you believe he died before he was even able to reach the pike. So how did he or his pants make it to Pike Mead's Reach then? In my opinion, something happened in the shroud where he and his army were transformed, much like the Fell being transformed by Ikor's magic. There is some lore that vaguely reference this could be the case, but that information may be one of those things that are either left for interpretation or just hasn't really been fully revealed yet. Athelin the Hunter, who hailed from Howling Peak, provides information that details the path the army took. She said that when Lord Vorgoth was assembling his army, he was telling everyone that King Gormander was a threat. Athelin wasn't having any of the propaganda he was offering, so she fled to the Rebel Woods. Upon rescuing her, she tells you that a faithful group to Queen Pikemead rebelled against Lord Vorgoth, and that battle took place at the historic battleground in the Veilwater Basin. Then there was a battle in which her own brother fought in at the ancient bridge. Then they proceeded until they arrived at Pikemead's Reach. Now, King Gormander was such an inept leader that he left the city's defenses to crumble. So when the time came that an attack actually happened, the capital just wasn't ready. In fact, the entire kingdom wasn't ready. That's some lore. The undead march on. I'm losing sleep. When I thought it was wise to stay overnight at the construction site, I thought wrong. I worked myself to the bone, heaving wooden beams by myself long after the others had left. King Gormander wants this tower finished before the northern troops fall in. Yeah, you heard that right. King Gormander was aware his brother, Lord Vorgoth, was turning into a dark plague. He only scrambled to prepare for an attack when he realized he was a target. Arguably, King Gormander's action made the attack on the people worse, but again, he only had himself in mind. Letting infrastructure to rot is one thing, but in an act of true betrayal, he locked the gates of the inner city, leaving people trapped inside. Their only option was to hide. Notes indicate they hid wherever they could, from their attics to the sewer system. And for good reason. Lord Vorgoth's army was violent and did not show any mercy. One of the more gruesome accounts of the army's wrath can be found in one of the watchtowers to the east. An unnamed man states that Lord Vorgoth's army comprised of a corrupted blue sea of soldiers, and they brought catapults. In the haze, you could see flashes of steel, followed by splashes of blood. If you were not met with the fatal swipe of a sword, your skull would be bashed in by a boot, like poor Caden. Please, I'm just a squire. Please don't crush my head, Caden. I'm sorry. Oh, this is brother. It was messy. It was messy. But of course, not everyone perished in such a dramatic way. Some of the deaths were actually kind of humorous. Is he raising something from below? I can't see. I have to lean a little further. Oh, he fell out. He fell out of the window. That's what happened. That's the attic right there. So it's like in here. This is what happened. He was like, I gotta see a little bit more of what's happening, and then he fell out of the window. In the end, Lord Vorgoth and his men caught up to King Gormander, and they killed him. After this battle, Lord Vorgoth does not pursue his sister in the Kindle Waste, something you'd think would be next on his agenda. Instead, I think he backtracked, making a stop at Stillwater Bay, and I'll circle back to that in just a bit. Back in the Kindle Waste, Queen Jasmina was dealing with an extended drought that occurred abruptly. Emily, the farmer, reached Brittlebush a long time ago with her family. She recounts that the lands there were fertile, and it's where she nurtured her green thumb. As the years went on, she eventually grew bored of farming and wanted to open up a tavern to serve people with the food that her family grew. As the drought parched the ground and the sun scorched the plants, she logged in her journal that she was no longer receiving customers, only those in need. With survival becoming increasingly a challenge, Queen Jasmina knew it was time to leave the Kindlewaits in pursuit of greener pastures. She rallied her people with the assistance of the younger ancients, packed up a caravan, and planned for Long Keep. This caravan traveled for some time together, but while in the Nomad Highlands, the caravan split into two groups, the northern and the southern caravans. While the reasons for the split aren't clearly explained, it was likely an attempt to rescue more people. The northern caravan was being led by Commander Cyrus, who planned to head towards Pikemead's Reach. They were aware of the attack on the capital at this point, and again, they were likely going there to look for more survivors. As they approached the capital, smoke still lingered. This caught Commander Cyrus off guard because at this point the attack on the capital was a while ago. But unbeknownst to them, murmurs of another calamity had been circulating around the area, one that was slithering in the background prior to the attack. Several people put pressure on leaders to investigate, and warnings were issued for the sake of public safety. And while these concerns were addressed to some capacity, many people waved them away. To them, this concern was nothing more than a tall tale. White Winds was once a small town settled near a tributary that connected to the lake system up north, but now it was engulfed in the shroud. A humble villager there wrote about strange movements beneath the sea, serpentine wisps they call them, gliding and shimmering faintly under the water's surface. Few believed his story at the time, but one such believer was actually the blacksmith. Usually quick to dismiss such tales, he didn't believe them until his daughter saw one. Soon enough, rumors of the wisp were stirring below Embervale shores. The villagers of Whitewind thought the wisp were omens of good fortune, thinking the blight of the elixir addiction would soon end. But where the tales of the wisp brought optimism to the residents of Whitewind, the residents of Pikemead's Reach were fearful. Stories got so much attention at the capital that warnings were placed at Skimmer's Cove, warnings to enter at your own risk. This was where it was believed the wisps were coming from. Leaders generally denied their existence, but as you reach King Gormander's tower, you learn the tales were true. As you, the Flameborn, approach King Gormander's tower, you face the same wisp wyvern that was responsible for the still smoldering ruins. Upon defeating it, Commander Cyrus's ring is found in the maw. There is no other lore about the rest of the crew further west, and they never rejoin with the Queen. It is implied the northern caravan never left the capital. Queen Jasmina's journey took a little bit of a different route, albeit it was still a bumpy one. They endured numerous attacks, leaving people and vital equipment behind. Equipment the Flameborn later obtains through a couple different quests. But after each attack, the remaining survivors carried on, and without knowing that you were often reading the stories from back to front, you may have even thought the Queen met her demise in a brawler arena. But eventually they do make it to Longkeep, where the Flameborn is created and then placed in the Cinder Vault. Thereafter, the Queen and the Ancients begin to call to humans to stow them away in vaults as well. Despite the Ancients being godlike, even they couldn't be everywhere all at once. So they had to come up with a way to call to these people and send them to their Cinder Vaults locally. And this process couldn't call to just anyone. The people had to be worthy. So on a clear night, the Ancients used their otherworldly powers and performed a ceremony that created a vessel, a way in which the worthy survivors could be signaled to safety. This involved the Ancients stretching out their arms and speaking in tongue to the night sky. A cluster of stars then vibrated and became brighter and brighter. Twitching and twinkling, it looked as though the stars cracked the firmament into 1,000 pieces. Falling to the surface, the stars then turned into these sentient lights, and their task was to seek out those who were worthy and lead them to their vaults. There they waited until they were rescued by the Flameborn. The blacksmith is the first survivor you rescue, and he may have been the only one who was not summoned by the lights, because the lore says he volunteered. Queen Jasmina and the Ancients continued on, leaving Longkeep and reaching the wildlands of the Blackmire. There, the Queen logs in a journal that the celestial lights brought her a vision, one that suggested Lord Vorgoth was not done. He wanted to spread the shroud far and wide. The vision told her to extend her mission past Embervale shores. Feeling this was a command, she relayed the vision back to the Ancients, and they obliged. They planned to charter a boat to Stillwater Bay to see how far the rot has spread. With Stillwater Bay in the Veilwater Basin, The queen quickly realized that the Drakh had returned. She was aware of their hatred for humans, so she decided it wouldn't be wise to place cinder vaults in the region. The thought of the Drakh prying open the vaults to do unthinkable things to the slumbering survivors haunted her. As they approached Stillwater Bay, Queen Jasmina learned that her brother had beat her to it, and her vision was a premonition. And this is why I think Lord Vorgoth backtracked after the attack on the capital. After coming down from Howling Peak, invading the capital, and killing his brother, I think he went to Stillwater Bay to spread the disease further. At some point, a dockmaster noted that the crown ought to prepare a maiden voyage, but the crew was ordered to not inspect the cargo, and Lord Vorgoth had some of his soldiers watching over the shipments to enforce this instruction. The dockmaster thought something was off, but he didn't know what to do. His suspicions eventually got the best of him one day, and luckily, the soldiers were half dead and fixated at a point beyond the horizon, so he disobeyed the command and snuck in a peek. In one of the boxes, he found a pale blue mist on a bed of mushrooms, but the damage had already been done. Previous shipments had already gone out, and this dockmaster didn't actually intervene or stop anything. He just resigned. And as it turns out, some of Lord Vorgoth's cargo washed up on the shores of the archipelago the Drakh had been banished to. These were washing up just as the islands were rising. So once again, the Drakh took this as another sign that if they return, the ancients may like them more than the humans now. Their return was documented by a lighthouse keeper who was keeping watch in a lighthouse to the west of Stillwater Bay, right at the edge of the Deadly Shroud, which is supposed to be the ocean. That's when I saw it. Rolling hills, not made of water, but made of countless bodies rising and falling with the storm's rhythm. A wave to end us all, a wave to crush us, a way to dye the ocean red, a wave of Drakh. Wow, what a dramatic illustration. Murmurs of people missing and shipments started swirling around town, but there was never a full-blown investigation. Besides, humans were already uncommon at this point in the basin. If the Drakh didn't get them, the Shroud or the Elixir would have. Now, on a side note, I want to point out that both the Vuka and the Drakh have come into contact with the Shroud, but we have yet to see fell versions of them. Maybe they are carriers, or maybe this is some kind of oversight. But this is basically the end of the story. The Queen and the Ancients leave Embervale and head towards other lands in an attempt to stop the spread of the Shroud. The rest of the story will be disclosed in 2026 when the game is fully released. So how do you think this story will end? Do you think we will ultimately have to fight Lord Vorgoth? Will we ever see one of the ancients? Let us know in the comments down below. Until then, my name is Heather. Thank you so much for letting me put my game on for you. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more from me, or come hang out during one of my streams. They happen every Sunday at around 6:30 Mountain Time. Thanks for watching. Bye!